The soundless ceremony, Elise Beaumont stared at her reflection in the ornate mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back at her. The ivory wedding dress hugged her slender frame, intricate beadwork catching the late afternoon sunlight. Her auburn hair was meticulously styled, tiny white flowers woven through the loose curls. She looked every bit the perfect bride except for her eyes. They betrayed the anxiety churning inside her. 10 minutes. Miss Beaumont, her father's assistant, Vivian, called through the door. Elise closed her eyes and took a deep breath. This wasn't how she had imagined her wedding day. At 27, she had resigned herself to the idea that marriage might never be in her future. Then came her father's unexpected announcement 3 months ago. She would marry Harrison Thorne, heir to Thorne Industries, sealing a business merger that would save her family's struggling company. The most puzzling aspect wasn't the arrangement itself. It was Harrison. Since their first meeting, he hadn't spoken a single word to her. Not during their chaperoned outings, not during the engagement party, not even when she directly asked him if this marriage was what he wanted. His silence had been absolute, communicating only through brief nods, handwritten notes, or through his personal assistant, Theodore. He's just shy, her mother had insisted. It's strategic, her father had explained. The less said before the contracts are signed, the better, but Elise wasn't convinced. There was something in Harrison's deep brown eyes, a mixture of apology and determination that suggested a more complex story. The wedding ceremony proceeded like a beautifully choreographed play where one actor refused to speak their lines. Harrison stood tall and handsome in his tailored suit, his dark hair neatly combed, his jawline tight with tension. When the minister asked for his vows, Theodore stepped forward, presenting a small card from which the minister read Harrison's promises. When it came time for I do, Harrison simply nodded. The guests whispered. Elise pretended not to notice. At the reception, Harrison remained by her side, a silent sentinel. He clinked glasses during toasts, danced with mechanical precision during their first dance, and cut the cake with practiced movements. Not once did he lean in to whisper in her ear or laugh at the best man's jokes. His eyes, however, never stopped watching her, not with desire or even fondness, but with something that looked remarkably like concern. Are you happy? Elise finally whispered when they had a moment alone on the terrace. Did they force you into this too? Harrison's fingers tightened around his champagne glass. For a moment, she thought he might speak, but instead, he pulled a small notepad from his pocket and wrote, "We'll talk tonight." As the evening came to a close, Elise felt the weight of uncertainty grow heavier. They rode in silence to Harrison's penthouse, their new home, the city lights blurring past the car window. Inside the lavish apartment, Harrison showed her to the master bedroom with a gesture, then disappeared into an adjoining room. Elise changed into her nightgown, her mind racing with possibilities. Was he mute? Did he have some speech impediment he was embarrassed about? Or was his silence a protest against their arranged marriage? When Harrison finally entered the bedroom in silk pajamas, Elise sat perched nervously on the edge of the massive bed. He approached slowly, his expression unreadable. Then, to her shock, he knelt before her, taking her hands in his. His lips parted, and for the first time, she heard his voice, a hoarse whisper as if rusty from disuse. "They're listening to everything I say. Your life depends on my silence." Whispers in the dark eyes froze, Harrison's words hanging in the air between them. The warmth drained from her face as she stared into his intense gaze, searching for any sign that this was some cruel joke. Instead, she found only earnest desperation. "What do you mean?" she whispered, instinctively matching his hushed tone. "Who's listening?" Harrison pressed a finger to his lips, then reached for the notepad on the nightstand. His handwriting was rushed but elegant, not safe to talk. "Bedroom swept for bugs this morning, but they'll install new ones tomorrow. Tonight is our only chance. I don't understand," Elise said, her voice trembling. "Who are they?" "Why would anyone care what we say to each other?" Harrison wrote again. "Your father didn't tell you the real reason for our marriage. Thorne Industries isn't just technology and pharmaceuticals. There's a classified division. They've developed something dangerous. I discovered it. Now they're watching me." Elise's mind reeled. Her father had presented the marriage as a simple business arrangement. Beaumont Finance was struggling, and an alliance with Thorne Industries would save them from bankruptcy. "Nothing about secrets or surveillance, but why me? Why this marriage?" she asked. Harrison's pen moved across the paper. Your father's company launders money for them. He's involved deeper than you know. They arranged our marriage to control both of us. You're my leash. They've made it clear what happens to you if I speak." A chill ran through Elise's body. She thought of her father's sudden insistence on this marriage, his uncharacteristic nervousness at the wedding, the way he avoided meeting her eyes during the toast. "So all these months, your silence." Harrison nodded, then wrote, "Had to protect you. Couldn't risk them thinking I told you anything. Even my assistant doesn't know. He thinks I have a neurological condition affecting my speech." "But you can speak," Elise said, stating the obvious. Harrison set down his pen and leaned closer. His voice, when it came, was soft but clear, like water flowing over smooth stones. "Yes. And I've waited months to tell you how sorry I am for dragging you into this." The sound of his voice, rich and deep despite its quietness, startled her. There was something intimate about hearing it for the first time, as if he'd shared a precious secret. "What happens now?" she asked, acutely aware of his proximity. The faint scent of his cologne, the warmth radiating from his body. "Now we have one night to plan," he said, his voice growing slightly stronger with each word. "Tomorrow I return to silence. But tonight we figure out how to expose them without getting ourselves killed. For the next hours," huddled close on the bed, Harrison revealed everything. How he'd discovered encrypted files detailing illegal weapons development using modified viral agents. How he'd been about to go public when his father died unexpectedly. How the new board chairman had called him into a meeting and played a recording of Elise's daily routine, making the threat clear. "I could have run," Harrison admitted, "disappeared somewhere, but they would have found someone else to continue the work. I needed to stay close, gather evidence when I'm just, what, collateral damage?" Elise couldn't keep the hurt from her voice. Harrison took her hand, his touch surprisingly gentle. "At first, yes. I resented the arrangement. But then I met you." His eyes met hers, and something shifted in the space between them. "I watched you at those charity events, saw how you treated everyone with kindness, from billionaires to waitstaff. I noticed how you actually read the business proposals your father dismissed. I realized you might be the only person I could trust." Elise felt her cheeks warm. "You noticed all that without speaking to me?" "Sometimes you see more clearly when you're forced to be silent," he said with the ghost of a smile. "I didn't fall in love with you, Elise. That would be a ridiculous claim after these strange months. But I came to respect you, to care about what happens to you." Dawn was approaching when they finally formulated a plan. They would pretend nothing had changed. Harrison would return to his silence. Elise would play the part of the new bride trying to make the best of her situation. Meanwhile, they would work to uncover evidence using coded communications that wouldn't raise suspicion. As pale light began filtering through the curtains, Harrison took her hands again. "Tomorrow, when I stop speaking, remember this night. Remember that my silence isn't rejection, it's protection." Elise nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the weight of their secret alliance. "One more thing," Harrison said, his voice barely audible as the first birds began to sing outside. "Thank you for marrying me. I know it wasn't your choice, but I promise you won't regret it." As he squeezed her hands and rose to prepare for the day ahead, Elise realized with startling clarity that her life had irrevocably changed, not just by the conspiracy they faced, but by the connection forged in whispers through the dark. Unraveling secrets. 2 weeks into their marriage, Elise had perfected the art of silent communication. A brush of fingers across the breakfast table meant we're being watched. A specific arrangement of flowers in the living room signaled new information. Harrison's tie selection indicated whether it was safe to leave. Notes in their predetermined hiding spot inside, a hollow chess piece in the study. To the outside world, they presented the image of a newlywed couple adjusting to married life. She trying to connect with her silent husband. He responding with polite gestures and notes passed through his ever-present assistant. In private, they were investigators piecing together the conspiracy that had ensnared them both. "Good morning, Mrs. Thorne," said Theodore, Harrison's lanky assistant, as Elise entered the dining room. "Mr. Thorne had an early meeting but asked me to inform you that he's arranged a spa day for you at Luminescence." Elise smiled, recognizing the signal. Luminescence Spa was their code for meeting at the public library, where surveillance was minimal. "How thoughtful. Please thank him for me when you see him." After Theodore left, Elise prepared carefully. selecting a casual outfit and bringing along a tote bag filled with magazines, the perfect cover for someone headed to a spa. Instead, she navigated to the library's quietest corner, where Harrison was already waiting, pretending to read a financial journal. They sat at the same table like strangers sharing space. Elise opened a magazine while Harrison slid a newspaper toward her. Inside was a USB drive. "Fashion tips?" she asked loudly enough for anyone nearby to hear, tapping the magazine. Harrison nodded, his eyes conveying much more. She understood. The drive contained important information. That evening, while Harrison attended a board meeting, Elise locked herself in their home office and accessed the drive. What she found made her blood run cold. Internal emails discussing Project Nightshade, a bioweapon disguised as a vaccine. The Beaumont financial connection was clear too. Her father's company had created a labyrinth of offshore accounts to fund the project. When Harrison returned home, his face was drawn. He loosened his tie, the blue one, their signal for urgent news, and led her to the bathroom, turning on the shower to mask their conversation. "They're accelerating the timeline," he whispered, his voice still strange to her ears after so many silent days. "The board voted to begin human trials next month." "Trials for what they're calling a vaccine?" Elise asked, showing him the files she'd found. "Exactly. It's designed to appear beneficial but contains a dormant agent they can trigger remotely. Selective population control, they're calling it." His voice cracked with disgust. "We need to go to the authorities," Elise insisted. "We've been through this. They have people everywhere. FBI, CIA, even local police. We need irrefutable evidence and multiple secure channels to release it." Elise ran her fingers through her hair in frustration. "There has to be someone we can trust." Harrison was quiet for a moment. "There might be. My former research partner, Juniper Blackwood. She left the company last year. Claimed ethical differences. I always wondered what she discovered. Can we contact her? It's risky, but yes. She's teaching at Berkeley now." The next day, Elise made what appeared to be an innocent alumni visit to her university, conveniently near Berkeley, while Harrison maintained his silent vigilance at Thorne headquarters. She tracked down Professor Blackwood after her afternoon lecture. Juniper Blackwood was younger than Elise had expected, with intelligent eyes and a cautious demeanor. When Elise mentioned Harrison's name, those eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Thorne," she said coolly, "congratulations on your recent marriage." "Thank you," Elise replied, matching her formal tone. "I was hoping to discuss some of your previous research. Harrison speaks highly of your work." She emphasized the word speaks, watching carefully for a reaction. Juniper's professional mask slipped momentarily. "Harrison speaks about me?" "When it's safe to do so," Elise said quietly. The professor checked her watch. "I have office hours now, but they're usually quiet. Would you care to join me?" In the privacy of Juniper's cluttered office, Elise revealed enough of their situation to establish trust without exposing their full knowledge. Juniper listened intently, her expression growing grimmer by the minute. "I left because I found anomalies in the vaccine trial data," she finally admitted. "Test subjects were exhibiting neurological changes, becoming more compliant, less questioning. When I raised concerns, I was removed from the project. A week later, my apartment was broken into." "Did you keep any evidence?" Elise asked. Juniper hesitated before opening a drawer and retrieving a small external hard drive. "I kept backups of everything. I've been afraid to use them. But if Harrison is finally taking a stand..." As Elise reached for the drive, Juniper grabbed her wrist. "Be careful. These people, they destroyed my career for asking questions. They'll do worse to you both for having answers." That night, when Elise shared Juniper's information with Harrison during their shower conversation, she saw something she hadn't witnessed before. Hope breaking through his carefully controlled expression. "This could be enough," he whispered, his fingers intertwining with hers. "Combined with what we've gathered, we might actually have a chance." "There's something else," Elise said, hesitant to voice her growing suspicion. "I've been reviewing my father's correspondence. I think he might be having second thoughts. There are cryptic messages to someone called Sentinel about course correction and moral imperatives." Harrison's grip tightened. "Sentinel was my father's code name in their secure communications. But your father is dead. Is he?" Harrison's eyes burned with intensity. "I never saw his body. The funeral was closed casket due to the accident." The shower water had begun to cool, but neither of them moved, the implications of this revelation washing over them. If Harrison's father was alive, everything they thought they knew about their situation might be wrong. "Tomorrow," Harrison said, decision crystallizing in his voice. "We need to visit my father's grave." As they prepared for bed that night, maintaining their charade of polite distance for the benefit of any listening devices, Elise caught Harrison watching her with an expression that transcended their partnership of necessity. In the silent language they'd developed, his eyes said what his lips couldn't in this surveilled space. That somewhere amid the conspiracy and danger, something unexpected was growing between them. Elise turned out the light, whispering a customary "Good night, Harrison" that would sound normal to any listeners. But as she settled under the covers, she allowed her hand to find his in the darkness, a touch that communicated everything words couldn't safely express. Dangerous revelations. The cemetery was eerily quiet, autumn leaves scattering across manicured lawns as Elise and Harrison made their way toward the Thorne family mausoleum. Harrison maintained his public silence, communicating through subtle hand gestures as Theodore trailed at a respectful distance. Their visit could be explained as a newlywed paying respects to his late father, a perfect cover for what they actually intended. Mr. Thorne would like some private time, Elise informed Theodore when they reached the imposing stone structure. "We'll just be a moment." Theodore nodded, retreating to a bench several yards away. Once inside the cool marble interior, Harrison whispered, "There's a maintenance entrance in the back. The groundskeeper owes me a favor. He'll delay Theodore if he tries to follow." The mausoleum was lined with generations of Thornes, their names etched in stone. At the newest addition, Jonathan Thorne, beloved father and visionary, Harrison ran his fingers along the lettering, then pressed a hidden mechanism. The heavy stone front swung outward slightly. "Empty," Elise breathed, peering into the vacant burial chamber. "As I suspected," Harrison said grimly. "Come on, we don't have much time." They exited through the maintenance door, slipping into a groundskeeper's cart that awaited them behind a stand of cypress trees. The elderly groundskeeper nodded once and drove them to the cemetery's service exit, where a nondescript sedan was parked. "Your father helped my son get treatment when no one would take his case," the old man explained to Elise's questioning look. "Some debts can't be repaid with money." Within minutes, they were driving toward the outskirts of the city, Harrison finally able to speak freely away from Theodore's surveillance. "If my father is alive, he's either part of the conspiracy or hiding from it," Harrison said, navigating through light traffic. "Either way, he's the key to understanding what we're really facing." "Where are we going?" Elise asked, checking repeatedly to ensure they weren't being followed. "A safe house only my father and I knew about. If he's in hiding, he might have left something there for me to find." The safe house turned out to be a modest cabin, tucked into a densely wooded area, accessible only by a narrow dirt road. Harrison retrieved a key from beneath a garden stone and cautiously led Elise inside. The interior was sparse but clean, showing signs of recent habitation. A coffee mug in the sink, a folded newspaper dated just 1 week earlier. Harrison moved quickly to a bookshelf, pulling out a leather-bound copy of Moby Dick and opening it to reveal a hollowed-out section containing a sealed envelope. "It's addressed to me," he said, his voice tight with emotion. The letter inside was written in a strong, confident hand. "Harrison, if you're reading this, you figured out that my death was staged. I had no choice. What began as legitimate research has been corrupted beyond recognition. When I discovered the true intentions behind Project Nightshade, I gathered what evidence I could and planned to expose everything, but they were watching too closely. My death bought me the freedom to work against them from the shadows. I didn't include you in this deception because your genuine grief would be the only thing keeping you safe. I never anticipated they would use Elise Beaumont to control you. For that I am deeply sorry. The evidence is hidden where we buried Pilot when you were 10. Remember how to find it. Trust no one from the board, especially not Winston Blackwell. He's been the architect of this corruption from the beginning. When the time is right, go to Media Contact B using Protocol Epsilon. I have allies preparing to help you both. Stay alive. Stay silent when necessary. I'll find you when I can." Dad Harrison's hands trembled as he finished reading. "Pilot was my dog," he explained to Elise. "We buried him on our family's summer property upstate. And Media Contact B is a journalist who helped expose one of our competitors' ethics violations years ago. This changes everything, Elise said. If your father has been gathering evidence all this time. The crack of a twig outside silenced her instantly. Harrison moved to the window, peering carefully through the blinds. His face hardened. Black SUV, 2 men approaching. We've been found. Theodore. No, these aren't company men. Different type of dangerous. Harrison moved swiftly to a cabinet, unlocking it to reveal a handgun. There's a cellar access behind the refrigerator. Take the tunnel to the storm shelter about 50 yards east. Wait for me there. I'm not leaving you, Elise protested. This isn't a discussion. His eyes met hers with fierce intensity. What we know is too important. One of us has to survive to expose this. Before she could argue further, the front window shattered. Harrison shoved her toward the kitchen as he returned fire, providing cover. Heart pounding, Elise pushed the refrigerator aside and found the trapdoor beneath, descending into darkness as gunshots echoed above. The tunnel was low and narrow, forcing her to crouch as she navigated by touch along the damp walls. After what seemed an eternity, she emerged into a small concrete bunker stocked with emergency supplies. She found a battery-powered radio and listened for any sounds of pursuit. Jumping when the shelter door finally opened, Harrison stumbled in, blood seeping through his shirt at the shoulder. It's not as bad as it looks, he said before she could speak, locking the heavy door behind him. Grazed me. The more pressing issue is that they weren't trying to kill us. They had tranquilizer darts. They want us alive. For questioning, or worse. Harrison grimaced as Elise helped him remove his jacket to examine the wound. If they've perfected the nightshade formula, they might need test subjects. As Elise cleaned and bandaged his wound using the first aid supplies, the implications of their situation sank in. We can't go back, can we? Not to our home, not to our lives. No, Harrison admitted. The moment we missed our check-in with Theodore, our cover was blown. They'll be watching everything, credit cards, phones, known associates. What about my father? If he's having second thoughts like I suspected, he's as trapped as we were. Harrison winced as she applied antiseptic. But now that we know my father is alive and working against them, we have a chance. We need to get to my family's summer house, find his evidence, and connect with his allies. Elise finished bandaging his shoulder, her hands lingering on his skin. You saved my life back there. We're in this together now, he said softly. Not just by arrangement anymore. The intimacy of the moment was interrupted by a beeping from Harrison's watch. He pressed a button, revealing a hidden compartment containing a small tracking device. They're still in the area, he said, studying the signal. We need to wait until nightfall, then make our way to the highway. There's an old friend who might help us if we can reach him. As dusk fell, they gathered what supplies they could carry and prepared to venture out. Before opening the shelter door, Harrison turned to Elise, his expression more vulnerable than she'd ever seen it. I need to tell you something. In case we don't both make it through this, he said, his voice low and urgent. These past weeks working with you, trusting you, it's been the first time in years I've felt like myself. Whatever happens, I want you to know that this marriage, forced as it was, has become the most real thing in my life. Elise felt a surge of emotion that surprised her with its intensity. In the midst of danger and uncertainty, something undeniable had grown between them. She reached up, touching his face gently. Then let's make sure we both survive to see what it could become, she whispered, sealing the promise with a kiss that neither of them had seen coming. Yet both had been moving toward since that first whispered revelation on their wedding night. As they parted, determination replaced vulnerability in Harrison's eyes. He checked his weapon, then the tracking device one final time. Ready? He asked. Elise nodded, knowing that whatever dangers lay ahead, they would face them together, no longer bound by arrangement or necessity, but by choice and the fragile, powerful thing growing between them. Ready, she answered, and they stepped out into the darkness, leaving behind the last vestiges of their former lives. Finding their voice. The rain fell in sheets, providing cover as Harrison and Elise crouched in the underbrush overlooking the Thorne family's lakeside property. 3 days of cautious travel, hitchhiking, back roads, and one nerve-wracking train ride had brought them to this moment. Harrison's shoulder had begun to heal, but the constant movement had taken its toll on both of them. 2 guards patrolling the perimeter, Harrison whispered, lowering the binoculars. They're expecting us. Can we wait them out? Elise asked, shivering slightly in her rain-soaked clothes. Harrison shook his head. If my father's evidence is still here, we need to get to it before they find it. And we're running out of time. Blackwell's scheduled to announce the Nightshade vaccine rollout in 3 days. So what's the plan? A diversion. Harrison pointed toward the boathouse at the far end of the property. I'll trigger the security system there and draw them away. You'll have approximately 4 minutes to get to the old oak tree where we buried Pilot, dig up whatever my father left, and get back to these woods. Elise gripped his arm. That's too dangerous. If they catch you, they won't, Harrison assured her, though they both knew it was far from certain. Remember what we discussed. If anything happens to me, you take the evidence to Journalist B using Protocol Epsilon. I remember, she said, her voice catching. But nothing's going to happen to you. Harrison checked his watch. Synchronized to 9:47. At 9:50, I create the diversion. By 9:54, you need to be back here, with or without the evidence. They synchronized their watches, and Harrison reached out, briefly touching her face. For luck, he murmured, then disappeared into the rainy darkness. Elise counted the seconds, muscles tense, prepared to run. At exactly 9:50, the boathouse alarm blared, lights flooding the structure. As predicted, both guards rushed toward it, weapons drawn. Elise sprinted across the open lawn, her heart pounding in her ears. The ancient oak stood sentinel near the eastern edge of the property. Beneath it, a small stone marker read, Pilot, best friend, faithful companion. Elise dropped to her knees, digging frantically with the collapsible shovel they'd acquired. 3 feet down, her tool hit something solid, a waterproof case. As she pulled it free, a flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping the lawn. Clutching the case to her chest, Elise flattened herself against the tree trunk, praying the rain and shadows would conceal her. The light passed just yards away, then moved on. She waited until it disappeared around the house before racing back toward their meeting point. Harrison was already there, soaked and breathing hard. Did you get it? She nodded, displaying the case. Let's go. They retreated deeper into the woods, finding shelter in an abandoned ranger station Harrison remembered from childhood explorations. Inside, they forced open the lock on the case to reveal a waterproof tablet, several USB drives, and a sealed envelope containing access credentials for secure servers. This is everything, Harrison breathed, examining the contents. Financial records, research data, internal communications. Enough to expose not just Project Nightshade, but the entire network behind it, including my father's role, Elise said quietly. Harrison met her eyes. Your father appears to have been coerced just as we were. Look at this. He pointed to an email chain showing threats made against Elise's mother years earlier, when her father had first attempted to distance himself from Thorn Industries. As they poured through the evidence, a comprehensive picture emerged. Project Nightshade had begun as legitimate research into pandemic prevention, but had been corrupted under Winston Blackwell's direction. The vaccine contained nanotechnology that could be remotely activated to alter brain chemistry, not to kill, but to make recipients compliant and suggestible. The initial distribution targets were political leaders, military personnel, and key government officials worldwide. They're not aiming for population control, Harrison realized. They're orchestrating a silent coup. Control the decision-makers and you control everything. Elise shuddered. How do we stop something this massive? We don't do it alone. Harrison activated the tablet's secure browser and initiated the contact protocol his father had established. Journalist B isn't just one person. It's a network of investigators and whistleblowers my father has been building for the past year. Within hours, they had made contact and arranged secure transmission of the evidence. By dawn, they were moving again, headed for a safe house where they would meet Jonathan Thorne's allies. The safe house turned out to be a modest apartment above a deli in a nearby town. As they approached cautiously, the door opened to reveal a face Harrison had thought he'd never see again. Dad, he whispered, emotion choking his voice. Jonathan Thorne embraced his son fiercely, then extended his hand to Elise. Thank you for keeping him alive, he said, his eyes conveying depths of gratitude words couldn't express. Inside, they found not just Jonathan but a team of 6 people, former Thorne scientists, security experts, and a renowned investigative journalist, all working to compile and verify the evidence for release. We're going live with everything in 24 hours, Jonathan explained. Multiple platforms, multiple countries simultaneously. Too big to contain, too comprehensive to discredit. What about Blackwell? Harrison asked. He still has the nightshade samples ready for distribution. That's being handled, Jonathan said grimly. We have people inside the facility. The samples will be neutralized tonight and the formula corrupted beyond recovery. And my father? Elise asked, the question she'd been dreading. Jonathan's expression softened. Gerald made his choice 3 weeks ago when he contacted me using our old emergency channel. He's been feeding us information since then at great personal risk. Right now, he's helping our team access the financial networks being used to fund this operation. Relief washed over Elise. He was trying to make it right. People can surprise you, Jonathan said, glancing meaningfully between her and his son. Sometimes it takes a crisis to reveal what truly matters. The next 24 hours passed in a blur of activity. Evidence was organized, statements recorded, distribution channels secured. Harrison and Elise shared everything they had discovered, filling in crucial gaps in the investigation. When exhaustion finally overtook them, they collapsed onto a small sofa in a back room, falling asleep with their fingers intertwined. They awoke to commotion, Jonathan's team gathering around screens, monitoring the global release of the Nightshade exposé. Within hours, international authorities were moving against Thorne Industries and its partners. Winston Blackwell was arrested attempting to board a private jet. The company's stock plummeted as arrest warrants were issued for board members across 3 continents. It's really happening, Elise whispered, watching the news coverage in amazement. Your voice, Harrison said, squeezing her hand. Our voices, finally being heard. 3 days later, after giving secure depositions to federal investigators, Harrison and Elise stood on the balcony of a mountain cabin, a true safe house, where they could begin to process all that had happened and decide what came next. The annulment papers, Harrison said, placing a folder on the table between them. As promised, once this is all settled legally, you'll be free to build whatever life you want. Elise looked at the folder, then at Harrison. The man who had been her silent, mysterious husband had become something else entirely. Partner, protector, and perhaps something more that neither had dared name yet. And if the life I want includes you? She asked quietly. Harrison's expression opened with vulnerable hope. I'd say we have a unique foundation. Not many marriages begin with conspiracy and gunfire. Or with months of silence followed by life-changing whispers, Elise added, moving closer to him. We could start over, he suggested, properly this time. No arrangements, no silence. Just us choosing each other. Elise reached for his hand, feeling the now familiar warmth of his fingers entwining with hers. I think we're already well past the beginning, don't you? Harrison smiled, a real unguarded smile that transformed his face. Then let's continue our story, together, by choice. As the mountain air swirled around them, crisp with the promise of coming winter, Elise rested her head against Harrison's shoulder. They had found their voices, not just to expose a conspiracy, but to speak truths to each other that neither had expected to discover in their strange, arranged beginning. I never thought I'd say this, Elise murmured. But I'm glad I married a man who wouldn't speak to me. Harrison laughed softly, wrapping his arm around her. And I never thought silence would lead me to the person I most want to talk to for the rest of my life. Below them, the valley stretched wide and open, filled with possibilities neither could have imagined on their wedding day. Whatever challenges remained, legal battles, public scrutiny, rebuilding their lives, they would face them together, their voices joined in a harmony that had begun with a single, whispered sentence in the dark. The story that had started with silence would continue with truth, spoken freely, cherished deeply and protected fiercely by 2 people who had discovered that sometimes the most important words come after the vows are exchanged.